Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Great, thank you.
So Juvenile Hall wanted to know why you're videotaping their building.
Just gathering content for a little story I'm working on.
Okay. Is that for like school or something?
Just I have a blog and such.
Okay. Do you have ID on you?
I prefer not to identify.
Okay, I'd like to see it. You're required by law to give me your ID.
Actually, unless I've been suspected of committing a crime, I'm not required to.
You're filming a government building.
From
Okay.
a public sidewalk.
Right, that's
which is
fine.
perfectly legal.
Right. I have the right to detain you, okay? And you're required to identify yourself.
Well,
You're not being charged with anything.
I understand that. I understand that, officer, but I do understand California law. Unless you have reasonable suspicion that I've actually committed a crime,
Okay.
filming a government building from a public sidewalk, which is protected by the First Amendment, is not a crime.
No, but I have the right to detain you to figure out what's going on, okay?
Okay.
You're addressed in all BDUs. You got a video camera, 2 video cameras, okay?
Okay.
And Juvenile Hall is concerned. Okay, if no crime is committed, then no big deal. Okay, but I do have the right to identify you. You are required to give me your ID.
No, I'm not. Unless you have reasonable suspicion that I've actually committed a crime, I'm not required to identify myself. No, I'm
You're
not.
being detained.
Okay, officer, what am I being detained for?
For suspicion of why you're dressed and acting all weird in front of Juvenile Hall.
Well, suspicion is not a crime.
Right, it's not probable cause. It's reasonable suspicion to detain you to investigate what's going on.
Okay, and I just told you what's going on. Well, officer, at this point, I'd like to speak to a supervisor, so I would ask that you call a sergeant out here.
Absolutely.
How you doing, dude?
Hi, how you doing, sir?
Good. What's going on today?
Just gathering content for a little story.
Doing what?
Just gathering content, like B-roll, for a little story I'm doing.
Ooh, what's the story on?
It's just for a blog I write.
What's the blog about?
I'd rather not say it this time, because it's not published yet, so, just getting some B-roll.
Whatever.
Okay.
Okay, but you understand why we came out here?
I understand.
Okay. So you think it's a little weird that you're out here filming Juvenile Hall?
Okay. Well, I've been on the public sidewalk the whole time.
No, that's
I
fine.
haven't gone
Not
on
saying-
any
not saying
restricted
anything
areas.
wrong with that,
Okay.
but we just want to make sure that you're not coming out here trying to snoop around and do something. Because people tend to do reconnaissance, you know?
Yeah.
You want to talk to the sergeant, I take it?
Yeah, because like the other officer, she asked for my ID. I respectfully declined because, I know what my rights are. Unless there's reasonable suspicion that a crime has actually been committed, I'm not required to identify myself. So the other officer here is suggesting that she has the right to ID me. I'm saying no. So at this point, I think it would be best to have a supervisor come out and we can clarify all this.
That's fine.
Okay.
Whatever.
So just to clarify, I am being legally detained. I'm not free to leave.
As far as I know, you haven't done anything criminal. We just asked who you were.
Okay. Well, the other officer here said that I was being detained. So.
I think it's suspicious that you're out here filming a Juvenile Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, I was detaining you to find out who you are.
Oh, so I am being detained.
I am detaining you.
I'm not free to leave then. Okay. All right.
Not accusing you of any crime or anything. Just trying to figure out why you're out here.
Okay. And like I said, I understand that. You got a call for service. You have to come out and investigate. I explained to you what I was doing. But, and you've even admitted that I'm not doing anything wrong. There's no crime being committed. Then I really don't understand why I'm being detained then.
Do you want to speak to our sergeant?
If I'm being detained, yes.
Sergeant Lara, Santa Maria Police Department. Today's date is 1/23 of 2017. The time is 16:13 hours. Are you getting that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I want a stamp too, okay?
Okay.
How can we help you?
Nothing. I just, your officers made contact with me. I explained to them I'm
Okay.
gathering content for a little story I'm doing.
Alrighty.
And one of your officers, she wanted to see my ID. I told her I'd prefer not to. And
Actually, we do have the right to ask you for your ID because they call us here. It is a juvenile hall facility here, so we do have your authority. Okay, so if you're doing a story, yes, we do have that right, sir.
Okay, and I explained to your officer that unless I understand California law, I've been through this before.
Okay.
unless you have reasonable suspicion that
We
I've
do have reasonable suspicions.
that I've actually committed a crime.
No.
Hear me out, okay?
Okay.
Listen to her.
So we have people that do reconnaissance on police, on our juvenile hall facilities, jail facilities, people that
Right,
gather
okay.
information, take video surveillance, try to identify us, identify our vehicles, and do all that kind of stuff for malicious purposes, okay? And I'm not saying that's what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing out here. You're saying that you're doing this for a blog or whatever. So we're detaining you to figure out whether or not you're doing this for malicious purposes or completely innocent purposes. And if it's for completely innocent purposes, that's totally fine. But we do have the right to identify you, okay? And if we ID you and everything's good to go, then you're fine.
And I have a right to decline because I know the law. I know my right. I'm not trying to be confrontational or anything. But unless you have reasonable suspicion that I've actually committed a crime, I'm not required
So listen to the officer there.
to identify myself.
So the way a detention works, right? We don't have probable cause at this point. The reason we detain people is to investigate something to see whether or not a crime has been committed. So when we detain somebody, at that point we do not know whether or not a crime has been committed or not yet. Okay? It's during the detention we do our investigation to identify that person and find out why they're there doing what they're doing. And if no crime has been committed, there's no probable cause, and that person is free to go. But during a detention, that's when we do our investigation. At that point, the person is required to identify themselves by law. No crime has been committed that I can tell at this point. You're right. That's correct.
Okay.
But we still have the right to detain you and to identify you. Okay?
Okay, but what probable cause is there to suspect that I have committed a crime? I'm filming from a public
Sir, if there was
sidewalk.
probable cause, you would be in handcuffs already.
Right.
That's what she's trying to explain to you.
Okay.
It's
But
a
we do
detention.
have, exactly, a detention just to investigate. And we didn't come out here on our own. They contacted us.
Yeah, you got to call for service. I understand
So,
that.
and if you know the law and everything, you know that part too, okay? And bottom line is, the officer's right, and we do have a job to do, obviously. Taxpayers pay us to do a job, and this is part of the job,
Okay.
okay? So all she's asking for identification, you know who we're talking to. She's not asking for too much,
Okay.
okay?
And I'm respectfully declining.
Okay, well, we do need an ID, sir.
Okay, well, I'm not going to provide identification. Like I said, I've been through this before. You know, I've been through similar situations.
We're gonna this way and start our camera too, so that way, I mean, everything's recorded, okay,
Okay.
sir? So, and what was the call? All right, this is what's gonna happen,
Okay, sir.
okay? We're gonna stand around till you take care of your business, okay? And then whatever you need for your blog, do the filming here from here, and obviously that's private property over there.
Okay.
And then leave when you're ready, okay? But we're gonna stand around here to make sure that the facility is safe.
Okay, that's
Because
perfectly
there are
fine.
kids in here, and that's our main concern here, kids. Okay? So we don't know what you're doing here, and we don't feel comfortable just leaving you here. So we are going to stick around, and then when you're done, then you can leave.
Actually, I'm already ready.
Well, then we can get
Yeah.
going then, okay?
Okay.
And everything will be documented. We're writing a report and everything, all the
Okay.
pictures and everything. So we have our own little information too, okay?
Okay.
All right, so whenever you're ready, you can get out of here or
Okay.
whatever you're going to do.
So I'm no longer being detained. I'm free to go.
You're free to go.
Okay.